I do think it shows a bit of a different picture of, first of all, his truthfulness. I think that's in question. But secondly, whether or not he was fully aware of what he was getting into when he went there.
Yeah, well, now he's lied about it. That's on the record. But I'm not confident that we're going to see Bernie Sanders or some of these folks call on him to drop out. But I guess it is too soon to tell.
Let's jump right into this clip about Graham Platner and his tattoo on Allie Phillip's show.
A tattoo, the internet, and a high-stakes primary election for Maine's Senate seat. And tonight, old social media posts may be coming back to haunt Graham Platner. He is the Democratic hopeful looking to fill Susan Collins' seat. And this week, Platner said that he covered a chest tattoo that some people said looked like a Nazi symbol. And here's what it looks like right now. You can see it there. He claims that he didn't know what it meant when he got it.
Are you a secret Nazi?
I am not a secret Nazi. We did what Marines on Liberty do, and we decided to go get a tattoo. And we went to a tattoo parlor in Split, Croatia, and we chose a terrifying looking skull and crossbones off the wall because we were Marines, and, you know, skulls and crossbones are a pretty standard military thing.
But CNN's K-File dug up Platner's now deleted Reddit post from 6 years ago that undercut that claim. In one thread, Platner weighed in on a conversation about the Totenkopf, which is the Nazi version of the skull and crossbones. And someone else in the thread brought up the fact that some of the Navy SEALs use the so-called Punisher skull as their emblem. And Platner writes in part, "When I was in Ramadi as a Marine grunt, the SEAL platoon we worked closely with for the deployment all had the Punisher skull spray painted on their armor carriers." CNN also spoke to an acquaintance of Platner's from more than a decade ago who said that he spoke about his tattoo resembling a Nazi symbol. And a second person told CNN that the acquaintance told them that Platner had described it as a Nazi-style design. Platner's campaign declined to comment on this story, but it goes from bad to worse. What now, Sochi? And why are so many Democrats unwilling to say this is not going to work? This is not acceptable.
Well, I think this new reporting might change things, and I think that he actually needs to think about getting out of the race. You just mentioned this is a high-stakes race. Democrats don't want to be talking about this next fall. This is a seat that potentially Democrats could flip that could cost us potential control of the Senate. And so I think that there needs to be a little bit more pressure on him to resign. I think that it has gone too far. And the fact that we are a year from the election and we are talking about a scandal involving, you know, something that at this point is solvable. If he were to get out of the race, Democrats could potentially have another rising candidate and could go ahead and beat Susan Collins. But at this point, if he moves forward, Democrats aren't winning the seat.
I hate to break the news to you, but he's winning the primary by 30 points.
Well, I think that's why he needs to get out.
Getting a Nazi tattoo made him more popular.
I don't think it made him more popular
among Democrats. You've got a guy running for attorney general in Virginia who wants to murder Republicans, and he raised $500,000 off of it. You got Nazi tattoo guy in Maine. I sat out here for a year, 2 years, listening to every Democrat at this table say, Donald Trump's a Nazi, Elon's a Nazi, and your party is now in love with a guy with a Nazi tattoo who trained a left-wing paramilitary group and called himself an Antifa super soldier on the internet, and he's going up every day. Good luck getting him out.
Your president?
Good luck getting him out.
The person that you nominated
Good luck
pardoned 1,600 insurrectionists. I don't think the Republican Party has.
You're not going to wash away the Nazi tattoo with your old talking points.
And what did I just say? What did I just say? I said that he should resign.
Good luck.
And I think that Democrats should
Scott,
all
are you
speak
making
out
the argument that he should stay in? You seem to be very eager to defend his strength in the primary.
I am but a humble political analyst, and I will just tell you that when you're winning a race by 30 points, if a pundit on television tells you, well, you need to think about dropping out, you laugh in their face.
I don't know.
This is a year out.
I feel like you ought to take the agreement when it's happening. I mean, she's saying pretty clearly he should leave the race.
I want Democrats to be who they are. This is who they are.
This is not
who they are.
No, it is not. Hold on. You're saying that Democrats are Nazis? Is
I'm saying it's very on brand right now.
Sorry.
Very on brand.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on, Scott. Really, like, are you suggesting that, like, a person who wears a Nazi tattoo, because he was in the military or whatever, is representative of the entire Democratic Party? Is that the...
I'm only reading the polling, Abby. When all this story broke and he started talking about it, he literally got more popular. He's beating the incumbent governor of Maine by 30 points.
You realize that he's running in one state, in Maine, and you're also saying that because of that, he's representative of the Democratic Party. You said this is who they are. Who is they?
Look at the polling. Look at the energy.
This is
Look,
not about
this
the
is
polling.
who they
This is
want.
not about the polling.
This is who they want. Bernie Sanders wants him. The beating heart of the Democratic Party, where their energy is, wants the Nazi tattoo guy. That's what they want.
75% of Democrats polled in that state did say that he stands with their value, and that was after the initial.
What was the number?
Broke. 75%. That's according to Real Clear Politics. So that was after, and again, who knows? Maybe this ultimately will be disqualifying, what the K-File has reported, but nothing thus far, even very incriminating reports, haven't been enough to assuage or concern voters and encourage him to drop out. And it's an interesting point because, you know, Bernie Sanders, a lot of folks, even just this morning, continue to stand by him. So I'll wait to see what this new report does.
Let me play what Bernie Sanders has said about this. Let's play the Bernie clip.
I think if this country is about anything, it's about understanding that every person, me, you, everybody else, has gone dark moments in our history, and we go on.
So you're standing by your endorsement?
Absolutely.
That's embarrassing. I'm sorry, that's embarrassing because, look, I understand that why the reason so many Democrats are holding the line is because they're looking at the Republicans and they're saying they always hold the line and it doesn't matter how embarrassing, how awful their candidate is. And so they're saying we need to do the same thing. And I'm saying, no, don't do the same thing. That dude doesn't represent me. We need to assess our entire American political value system. Having a Nazi tattoo should be disqualifying. Period. End of sentence. Like, this guy doesn't represent the values of the Democratic Party. He represents maybe the values of Maine, which is frightening enough. And I'm just saying that, like, I don't think the way that you return fire with the Republicans is by going as low and as ridiculous as they do. Like, you can't stand yourself apart. You know what they say about arguing with a fool? From a distance, you can't tell who is who. And right now, it's like the reason that people make those arguments about both parties being the same is because of stuff like this.
You know, you acknowledge that some of this polling that we're talking about is before all of this. There are two things that you should keep in mind. One is that he initially claimed that he didn't know the connection between the tattoo and Nazi symbols. He said while he was in the military, he enlisted in the Army. It involves a full physical exam of all the tattoos that he has. It never got flagged. He passed a full background check to receive a security clearance to join the ambassador to Afghanistan security detail. Not flagged in any of those situations. However, CNN's reporting today finds that in a 2020 online discussion that he said that the SS lightning bolt tattoos were a culture marker within Marine Scouts sniper units. That is something that is probably worth scrutiny, if that is true. He also says he has no idea what they're talking about and about the criticism of it, and I will be sure to inform the black guys I know with bolts that they're Nazis now.
Oh.
So
I got a black friend.
So again,
okay.
Look, I do think that this new information is new information, and it will be interesting to see what happens to some of that polling once the voters have this information, because I do think it shows a bit of a different picture of, first of all, his truthfulness. I think that's in question. But secondly, whether or not he was fully aware of what he was getting into when he went there.
Yeah, well, now he's lied about it. That's on the record. But I'm not confident that we're going to see Bernie Sanders or some of these folks call on him to drop out. But I guess it is too soon to tell.
Bernie Sanders isn't the head of the Democratic Party, I think.
He's not?
Absolutely not. Don't even.
Where's the energy? Where's the energy of the party?
Here is what I will tell you.
Schumer wants Mills.
Scott,
Sanders wants this guy, and he's winning by 30.
Let me tell you, when polling happens at this stage in a race, these are very engaged voters. These are not necessarily, and even then, not all voters right now are completely engaged in this race. So I will say that it will be interesting to see where the polling goes. Republicans will rush to try to make this person the head of the Democratic Party. And I will just warn you, I don't know how many times over the last few months you guys have said that it is dangerous whenever you're calling Donald Trump or anyone else a name like a Nazi or any sort of other name, and it leads to violence. I would be careful to frame all Democrats as
he
Nazis.
literally
blaming
had
us
the
for the
Nazi
tattoos?
tattoo. He literally
I'm
had the
telling
Nazi
you
tattoo.
that the party, that is not the position of the entire party. And
Okay.
so if you're going to sit
He's
here
winning by 30.
and say it doesn't
In
matter
one
when
state.
he's winning, he is not reflecting
He is totally
the
unknown. and
entire
listen,
party.
Listen, I understand you don't want to have this guy, and I wouldn't either. He is a totally unknown guy, comes out of nowhere. He's got the full support of the left-wing, progressive Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. And
Like everybody
he's beating.
is who supports Bernie Sanders?
Yes, look at the polling. And here's the most important thing. He's beating the incumbent governor of the state by 30 points. This isn't happening in a vacuum. People are comparing an establishment figure like Mills and this insurgent left-wing radical like Platner, and they're like, you know what? We'll take the Nazi tattoos. It's fine. And I think look,
Well,
it may be early,
reporting.
but people are following this race, and the polling is pretty clear. It's not that close.
Look, I think this is not obviously the first time that we've had an unsavory candidate endorsed by the establishment, despite his past words. That happened in an
He's not endorsed by the establishment. She is.
Excuse me, but I'm saying, like, you're suggesting that this is representative of the Democratic Party. I'm just saying,
split, is what I
in the
think.
past, you know, there was a Senate race in Alabama
That's right.
in which Donald Trump endorsed the candidate who had said all kinds of inflammatory things, all kinds of skeletons in his closet, and they ended up losing that Senate race to a Democrat. So it's happened before. This wouldn't be the first time. And by the way, I mean, I do think both of you seem reluctant to take yes for an answer. At this table, at least, you have two Democrats basically saying, this guy should go, and you guys are very insistent
I'm glad
that
they are,
he's
but he's not
representative of the
going
Democratic
anywhere.
Party when
I'm
they're
just-
making
I'm
it
not
clear
sure
that
about
he's
that.
I
not.
just don't think this guy. Look, he doesn't answer to you. I mean, I wish he did, and I wish you were in charge. He answers to the energy base in your party, and right now the energy is
in
behind
that
these
state.
left-wing, progressive kinds of candidates. This is
We're
who they
talking
want.
about this at the end of the show. Zoran Mamdani feels like another example. Obviously, he doesn't have a Nazi tattoo, but there's a lot of alarming reporting coming out about his ties to terror sympathizers. So it seems like there is at least here.
Ties
over
to terror
terrorists.
sympathizers. All right,
The most striking part about this whole debate to me was that they spent 10, 12 minutes debating Graham Platner's tattoo, his truthfulness about it, and the optics for the Democratic Party, but not for 1 second, literally, did they discuss his actual policy platform or what he stands for on the issues. Remarkable. He's leading by 30 points in the primary polls and running against a 72-year-old Republican incumbent, Susan Collins. And that means electorally, he's not only viable, he's super strong. The conversation at no time was about his competence. The question wasn't, you know, is he right on healthcare? Is he right on housing? It was, does a Nazi tattoo automatically make someone unfit for office regardless of anything else? Now, the critics would argue that the tattoo's origin, even if it was naive or apolitical, the cover-up was inconsistent, and the explanations raised questions about Graham Platner's honesty and his judgment, which is totally a fair point. I will totally give you that. But I don't know that I'd call it disqualifying when he's leading by 30 points ahead of the Republican Senator Susan Collins, who would win if Platner dropped out. So the disqualification isn't about policy, it's about optics, I guess. It's kind of amazing to me that Graham Platner, despite leading by 30 points, and he represents the Sanders-style populist wing of the Democratic Party, skeptical of corporate power, pro-labor, anti-war, anti-oligarch, that kind of stuff. And because of that, the Democratic establishment seems more willing to risk losing a seat to a Republican than let a progressive win it. So instead of debating his policy, CNN's panel here treats him like a liability, even though, again, he's up by 30 points in the polls. And it shows a deeper bias that this scandal sort of offers a perfect excuse to avoid talking about actual policy. By focusing on the tattoo, they can delegitimize a progressive insurgent without ever having to debate his platform. It's opposition research. So this whole thing feels a little too much like what happened to Al Franken when he got caught up in the Me Too stuff years ago, where there was a media pile-on that forced him out of the Senate. And I'd hate to see history repeat itself in Maine with Susan Collins, a Republican, reelected simply because Democrats turned on their own. Whatever you think of Graham Platner, it's political malpractice to kneecap a pro-labor progressive who actually has a shot at flipping a Republican seat. If you guys like that, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more. I'll see you real soon. Bye.